Why not?
Aya.
Daddy, what do you two lizard brain? Fire! Why not?
Aya.
Daddy, what do you two lizard brain?
As Yuri ignites the helicopter, Stranger Things 4 finale begins with Murray and Enzo looking on. Joyce and Hopper discuss their forthcoming date while they are in their hideout. A lovely Chianti, lasagna, and two orders of breadsticks are served as appetizers, Hopper suggests. Before the phone eventually rings, Joyce and Hopper have a passionate moment of intimacy. In Hawkins, Nancy repeats the scheme. Erica will inform Max and Lucas when it's appropriate for Max to entice Vecna to pursue her. Eddie and Dustin will then pull the bats away. In the end, Nancy, Steve, and Robin will enter his lies and burn the place down. The mission is initiated by the Upside Down team. However, Steve tells Dustin and Eddie to return home if things don't work out before he, Robin, and Nancy leave. Jonathan is trying to get at least one ticket back to Hawkins while Argyle is filling up the run in Nevada. Although things don't appear to be going well for them, Elle has a strategy that might shield Max and the others from harm's way. She recounts to Will, Mike, and the others how she used to piggyback Max's dogs. All she wants is a bathtub to relaxing, and Agile has one. As Max and Lucas settle into Wagner's home, we head back to Hawkins. The task begins once again to locate Wagner. However, one of the townspeople spots Erika outside getting ready to warn the group and goes to notify Jason, who is busy training with a new rifle he purchased. He is currently going to Creel House with a rifle. This cannot be good. Back in Russia, we find out that Hopper briefly described the situation to Dr. Owens' agent in Hawkins. It is now fairly obvious that they must return to Hawkins as quickly as possible. Joyce then understands that they are not required to be in Hawkins. All they have to do is combat the hive mentality. They recently escaped out of prison, and a fragment of that hive mind is still there. It appears that Hopper, Joyce, and Murray are now returning behind enemy lines, flamethrower in hand. In another scene in the state of Nevada, Jonathan and Argyle convince a Sapphire Pizza employee to let them use the kitchen for Elle's mentor voyage. And while Argyle makes pizza, Dustin and Eddie prepare for an episode of a lifetime. Then, after becoming trapped in the woods on the way to Creel House, poor Robin starts to feel very nervous. This allows Nancy and Steve more time to talk about their progress over the past few years and their future plans. However, Robin quickly interrupts to put an end to that embarrassing exchange. When Hopper and the others return to the prison after our trip to Russia, the guard station is deserted. We agree with Maureen that something is wrong, but they chose to reintroduce the tunnel. Furthermore, it just becomes worse when Hopper hears gunfire in the distance. Enzo monitors Yuri back at the hideout and reprimands him for stalling. Yuri needs to show that he's not the coward he is acting like because something scarier than a few Americans is on the horizon. We cut to Krill House in another scenario, where Max and Lucas are using notepads to converse. Lucas tries his luck and invites her to the movies after Max thanks him for being there. Fortunately, she responds yes while holding a picture of the two of them. After they detect Erika's signal, Max's portion of the plan begins. All Steve, Nancy, and Robin need now is for Vecna to fall for the ruse and pursue Max so they may enter covertly and put a stop to him.
What about it?
Girl, and the girl went off to fight.
But I do think we need. If your kids are truly in some kind of.
We can break back in.
Vecna is taunted by Max within Krill House until he begins to move upstairs and gets ready for his assault. Mike helps Elle get ready for her trip back to Sulphur Pizza and they take some time to discuss their relationship. And only a second before Argyle lays a delicious pizza in front of them, pineapple included, Jonathan talks to Will about how he wishes they still spoke to each other while Elle and Argyle tried to get Mike to try the delicious pizza. It's a wonderful moment, and it's wonderful that Jonathan doesn't feel compelled to press Will to explain what is happening. Max's plan isn't working and Elle is able to ride along with him. Max, however, isn't quite prepared to give up. She sits down and talks candidly with Vecna about how she feels about Billy's passing. She feels so guilty about Billy that she secretly wished she could die. After hearing this confession, Lucas begins to utter hurtful things such as deserving to be the fourth sacrifice. Naturally, Lucas is not referring to Vecna in this context. Since Max's plot was successful, Elle can now enter her head and battle Vecna in that manner, but she ends up in one of Max's memories. The next stage of their goal may now start that Vecna is focused on Max. In episode finale, Max flees. Vecna, Dustin, and Eddie call the bats to them. Erika flees Jackson's gang, and Jackson enters Krill House covertly. Dustin and Eddie lock themselves in the trailer as Max finds herself in her happy recollection at the end of the montage. Hopper, Joyce, and Mary return to the Russian prison where chaos reigns. The small demogorgons they witnessed have all escaped from their cages and are ravaging around murdering people. One man they locate tells what transpired and how the shadow they saw entered a person. However, since the man dies, they are unable to determine who it is. However, it is rather obvious that the monsters were infiltrated by the shadow. Steve, Nancy, and Robin enter Creel House in the Upside Down in order to confront Vecna from within. Elle passes through Max's head as they play hopscotch over Vecna's vines. She recalls something from Max's early years. However, from the other flashback Max is hiding in, she then recognizes the DJ station. Blood splatters all over when the balloons burst while Max is standing calmly at one of the tables. Vecna appears to have gained access to his memory. Lucas tries to gain Erika's attention in Creel House after realizing that things are going too long. However, Jason shows up there and is confused by the situation. Jason pulls the trigger while Lucas tries to persuade him to leave Max alone. If Lucas doesn't wake up Max, he threatens to kill him. For a little while, we return to Russia as Hopper devises a scheme to lure every monster to the pit so they may all be killed at once. Although Joyce dislikes the thought of Hopper being the bait, he is adamant about surviving this time. Dustin and Eddie get ready to battle the bats if they manage to get through. Steve and the others continue to play hopscotch while they battle bats. When the house moves, Vecna's vines pull Robin against one of the walls, and then Steve and Nancy come next. Eddie and Dustin continue to battle the bats while Hopper entices one of the little demo dogs to pursue them while Steve and the others struggle against the vines. Dustin returns to being a typical Hawkins when they learn that the bats are about to break into the trailer. However, Eddie cuts the rope between the two worlds, gathers his weapons, and leaves to lure the bats away after realizing they still need more time. Prior to witnessing it transform into the Creel House doll, Max recalls being occupied with piling chairs against the door. Max attempts to conceal himself in a different memory, but Vecna is aware of their scheme. Everyone else will perish unless Max turns herself in. Lucas tries to explain everything to Jason back in the real world, but he refuses to believe it. After they fight, Jason's companion is scared by the gunshots, which gives Erika the advantage to flee. But it can't be good when Jason steps on Max's Walkman. Good old days. When Elle eventually makes it to Max's memory realm, Vecna is just seconds away from finishing her and the real battle starts. Dustin does his best to get back into the upside down and falls in, but he injures his leg while Eddie dashes off. Eddie then experiences flashbacks, which is not encouraging for him when he ultimately chooses to confront the bats. That's not all, though. The conflict, taking it back from the top. That's not all, though. The conflict between Jason and Lucas is still going strong, while Hopper is still evading capture in Russia. Vecna gets ready to demonstrate all of his new tricks while Max attempts to piece together how L is in her memories. Dustin observes as Eddie eliminates as many bats as he can while their battle continues. He throws her into his domain and ties her up because the Vecna stroke L fight isn't going well. He ties Max up and makes her watch. Elle tries to get in touch with him and tells him that Papa is deceased in an attempt to dissuade him from his plan. However, even though Papa was a villain, Elle is one who gave birth to Vecna by discovering the Mind Flayer and enabling it to grant him additional power. Elle has been resisting Vecna's attempt to utilize her to open these doors the entire time, shutting the ones that opened repeatedly. In order to break through the barrier separating the worlds, he had to come up with a new strategy that required some compromises. We also see how friends and relatives struggle and gradually pass away when he assures her that there is nothing she can do to stop him. He then starts killing Max and unlocks the last gate to finish his quest. When Mike and the others return to Nevada, they attempt to wake Elle, but Vecna's power is too great. Mike is encouraged by Will to keep attempting and communicating with her. At last, he acknowledges his affection for her and his lack of fear of her, but afraid that she will eventually come to the realization that she is not in need of him. Mike opens up about all he has been afraid to express. He urged her to fight back against Vecna and to embrace her potential and love. His discourse is effective as well, not only for her either. It appears that Eddie, Hopper, and Lucas all retaliate. Max, though, before Elle manages to knock Vecna back, Lucas observes as her limbs gradually break. However, we are not exactly sure what this implies of her. Hopper is saved by Joyce, and two of them successfully guide the Demogorgons and his dogs into the trap before Murray burns them. All of the monsters fall with Vecna as he does. After being released, Steve, Nancy, and Robin can move on to phase 4. Another montage shows Steve and the others tending to Vecna in the Upside Down. Hopper using a sword to battle the Demogorgons, and Elle fighting Vecna in the trance world. Vecna tells Elle in his last moments that they already lost and that they don't know what is going to happen. Vecna, I hate to tell you this right now, but it's a little more difficult to destroy this entire gang, and they are determined to vanquish the one and only Vecna. Though we are unsure of the circumstances as of right now, we even catch a glimpse of Max waking up in Lucas's arms. Dustin discovers a serious injured Eddie in the Upside Down after Yuri and Enzo travel to Russia to pick up the group. Eddie did everything he could to make sure the plan worked, but it ultimately failed. Eddie did everything since this is Eddie's year and he is going to be a graduate. He makes Dustin swear to look after the small sheep for him. Before Dustin passes away, we see him fulfill his pledge to Eddie. And if Eddie's passing wasn't sufficient, then as Erica rushes to summon an ambulance, we see Max, who had survived Vecna's onslaught, pass away in Lucas's arms. We watch as the last portal blasts wide, taking Jason with it, as if her death had set off something in the upside down world. Buildings are torn down as the other portals rip open as well, coming together in the middle of Hawkins. Elle isn't ready to leave Max's side just yet, so Mike tries to wake her up in Nevada. She utilizes her power to restart her heart in a last-ditch effort to save her companion. After 2 days, as Elle and the others come into town to find out what happened, families begin fleeing Hawkins. An earthquake is being blamed by the administration for everything. They also discuss how Eddie was the main suspect in the killings that took place in the week before the earthquake, despite being assumed dead. When the surfer boy Peter Fan arrives at Nancy's house, she is loading her car and they are all reunited. After everything that transpired, we see Jonathan and Nancy finally get to see one another. Robin gives Steve a pat on the back as they leave. It appears that the love triangle would be resolved until the next season. Yes, we are finally here on the next season. Stranger Things 5 dropping tonight. Dustin reunites with Will, Mike, and Elle, and we learn that Lucas is at the hospital with Max. Next, we see Max in a coma as Lucas reads to her. As if we hadn't already been moved to tears several times by this show, I hate to mention this one of the most difficult moments we have seen so far. I hope Stranger Things 5 is gonna take that into consideration. When they all reunite, the agony of their separation crushes them. Will and Mike have different theories about what happened, but Lucas thinks Max's resurrection was a miracle. They may even be aware of the reality, however, nobody tells Lucas. Steve, Robin, Dustin show up at the school to provide their time and some goods for the less fortunate. As Steve and Dustin assist with sorting clothes, Robin wraps up assisting with Vicky. Vicky confides about her boyfriend's stress to Robin, and it appears that Robin could ultimately lead her happily ever after. Dustin later witnesses Eddie's uncle posting a missing persons flyer on his behalf. Mr. Manson maintains Eddie's innocence throughout the entire situation and refuses to speak with Dustin. Although Dustin was strong till the very end, he reveals that he was with Eddie when the earthquake struck and gives him back his necklace, thereby informing him that Eddie is dead. Dustin is certain that everyone would have liked him if they had known who he truly was. At the cabin of Hopper, after everything has transpired, everyone works together to begin cleaning up and restoring it to its best condition while attempting to assess their well being. Nancy and Jonathan board up the windows. Despite their apparent desire to share, they both choose not to. Additionally, he lies to Nancy once more when she inquires about his college application letter. Elle finds some privacy in the cabin, allowing Will and Mike to talk. Mike is aware that Elle is questioning if she could have actually saved them all and is concerned that Brenna was correct about her lack of readiness. Even though she is in a coma, we know that Max wouldn't be here today without her. Then, after returning to Hawkins, Will tells Mike that he can still feel Vecna. Will continues to have strange ties to Vecna, the Mind Flayer, and the Upside Down. He is wounded yet alive. Killing him permanently must now be their goal. The arrival of an automobile that shouts government interrupts the discourse. While cleaning her room, Elle discovers a bottle inside and we watch her re-enter her trance and return to Max's doors. Max isn't present though, but as she hears her room's door cracked open, she is jolted out of it. Elle eventually finds out that Hopper is still alive. At the end of the episode, Will feels a chill. Hawkins is covered in upside down dust, and everyone knows that their lives will soon be permanently altered, just as ours will be with the premiere of Stranger Things 5 tonight. The episode's conclusion, in which the upside down reality transitioned into the human occupied reality, doesn't bother me at all. Actually, that's what I was hoping to see. There were screams, smashes, and booms throughout the symphonic conclusion, and Max's focus and Singh's wholeheartedly doomed performance helped it. The most surprising things Stranger Things has ever done is when Max Sadie Singh dies tragically at the end of this incredible season. Furthermore, they will undoubtedly use Max in some capacity in season 5, so I don't think they killed her completely. Vecna felt meek in this episode in comparison to the first installment where he was aggressive. I hope Stranger Things 5 will be different in comparison and we will see the aggressive side of Vecna again. That, in my opinion, would have lived up to his vicious personality in Stranger Things 4 that we witnessed in the previous episodes in the first installment. In order to unlock the portal, Vecna killed Max and took her life essence. She is practically brain dead, even if Eleven was able to heal her body. Although she is still alive, but in her physical form, she is not. Since Eddie's death wraps up his entire story arc, which serves as the sort of foundation for the arc of all the season 4 Hawkins subplot, it wasn't exactly meaningless. From his intense guilt over fleeing the first murder scene to his ultimately atonement when he refuses to back down at the end.
I've seen Mike's room look worse. He's too late to throw saving the world.
Overall, Stranger Things 4 left us hunched over a cliffhanger, but the premiere of Stranger Things 5 tonight will soon provide us with more deets and stories and close the gaps on the plot synopsis.
Hey.
Going on swiftly, these are the primary characters who we anticipate are returning in Stranger Things 5.
James Hopper Jr., also known as Jim Hopper, is portrayed by David Harbour. In the little quiet town of Hawkins, Indiana, where he served as chief of police, Hopper led a carefree life despite being plagued by his past. Hopper's life became unnecessarily complicated after an old acquaintance, Joyce Byers, reported that her son Will had vanished for no apparent reason. When he learned that the adjacent Hawkins National Laboratory had carried out research that unintentionally opened a doorway to an alternate realm, he started to piece together a conspiracy involving the lab. 11, the escaping kid test subject who accidentally opened the gate utilizing unique psychokinetic skills, was encountered by Hopper and Joyce during their investigations. Hopper and Joyce eventually gained permission to pass through the gate and look for Will in the alternate reality, where they were able to find, resuscitate, and save him.
Hopper learned that year that 11, who had been assumed dead, was actually still alive and surviving on her own in the woods. He made the decision to adopt her, giving her a place to live in his cabin and doing everything he could to keep her out of sight of the law. In October 1984, local crops started to rot, and Hopper found that the deterioration was coming from enigmatic tunnels under Hawkins. Reluctantly, Hawkins' lab's new director, Dr. Owens, told him that the interdimensional gate beneath the building was actively expanding and contaminating the surrounding area. Later, a group of teenage demogorgons known as Demodogs from the parallel dimension ambushed the laboratory, surprising Hopper and Owens.
Hopper and his companions barely survived the attack. On returning to the laboratory with Hopper, 11 removed the immediate threat by using her particular talents to unlock the gate and break off the connection to what she referred as the Upside Down. Hopper observed that the final remnants of the gate were filled in with cement as Hawkins' lab was closed in the ensuing months. With Owens' assistance, James Hopper was able to officially adopt 11. Her legal name was officially changed to Jane Hopper. Jane Hopper, born Jane Ives, also known as 11 or Elle, is portrayed by Millie Bobby Brown. Jane was born with unique psychokinetic talents, either accidentally or on purpose. Dr. Martin Brainer's MK Ultra government program experimented on Jane's mother, Terry, which had an impact on Jane while she was still in the womb. Dr. Brenner abducted Jane as soon as she was born and took her to Hawkins National Laboratory. Jane was renamed 11 since she was the ninth child Brenner had used as a test subject. Brenner denied her access to the outside world while testing 11's and the others' skills in the lab throughout her early years. The lab's first psychokinetic test subject, Henry Creel, also known as 1, ruthlessly killed the other test subjects in 1979 after tricking an 8-year-old 11 into resuming his dominant abilities. He tried to persuade 11 to support him, but she resisted and defeated him, forcing him to enter another reality temporarily. 11's power were muted after the incident and she went into a coma and had wild amnesia.
Brenner unintentionally opened a second gateway in the lab on November 6, 1983, 4 years later, when he forced 11 to contact an extraterrestrial being. Mike, Lucas, and Dustin quickly located 11 as she fled the lab via a drain pipe during the confusion. When Mike learned of her skills, he thought she might be able to locate their friend Will, who had gone missing. She and Mike developed a close relationship during their time together and soon came to like one another. 11 finally vanished inexplicably after destroying the monster she had released during a showdown at Hawkins Middle School in an effort to save her companions.
11 had lived well, appearing to be dead, and she had secretly moved in with Jim Hopper at his grandfather's former cabin. 11, fed up with being cut off from her pals, chose to disobey Hopper's orders and embarked on a quest to learn more about herself and her past. She returned to Hawkins after realizing she couldn't abandon her companions, joining her comrades to assist them defeat the Mind Flayer, another otherworld threat. Jane Hopper is her official name now, and Hopper adopted 11 as his daughter. She and Mike went to the Snowball School dance in December.
While 11's sexual relationship with Mike continued to grow, she had become friends with Max by the summer of 1985. She and her allies started working to defeat the Mind Flayer after discovering that it had returned to cause havoc in Hawkins. 11 sustained a catastrophic injury and subsequently lost her abilities during their battle against the Mind Flayer's several proxy forms, the Flayed and the Possessed Billy.
11 was adopted by the Byers family following Hopper's apparent death, and they were all moved to Lenora Hills, California, under the oversight of Dr. Sam Owens. Living without her abilities and being the target of bullies made it difficult for her to adapt to her new existence. She consented to take part in Nina, an experimental plan Owens and Brenner devised to restore and potentially enhance her talents when Owens told her of a new evil that threatened Hawkins during spring break in 1986. 11 relived her suppressed memories as part of the process. She discovered that Creel was behind the 1979 tragedy and had come back to unleash mayhem in Hawkins today. Later, Eleven fled the Nina facility with the assistance of Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle, but she was the target of an assassination attempt headed by the unpredictable military leader Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan. After battling Creel again and providing telepathic support to her allies in Hawkins, Elle was eventually unable to prevent the Upside Down from invading Hawkins. Vecna. Vecna is portrayed by Jamie Campbell Bower, and Vecna also appears in Stranger Things, The First Shadow, and Stranger Things VR. Vecna was a humanoid monster who was allied with the Upside Down. He was originally a human named Henry Creel. Henry was born in Rachel, Nevada, and his family relocated to Hawkins in 1959 in the hopes that the new environment would help him overcome his difficult history. However, young Henry found he had acquired unique telepathic and psychokinetic skills after the Creels moved into their new house. Driven by a malevolent force, Henry utilized his abilities to kill his mother and sister after torturing them psychologically. Victor, Henry's father, was imprisoned and further deranged after he was wrongfully assumed to be the murderer.
Dr. Martin Brenner became interested in these happenings and sent Henry to Hawkins National Laboratory for study. He was assigned the number 001, making him the first child test subject in the lab's history. Henry described himself as a prisoner after Brenner placed Soteria, a tiny gadget that muted his powers and seemingly recorded his movements, into his neck. Henry eventually joined a number of orderlies who worked in the lab and helped Brenner. Brenner would later mimic Henry's abilities in 17 additional young test subjects, limiting their lives and movements to the lab.
In 1979, Henry used his abilities to deceive test subject 11 into taking out Soteria chip. Henry utilized his regained abilities to murder the other test subjects and employees in a fit of wrath, and he tried to kill 11 as well. But 11 refused to back down and finally defeated Vecna, launching him through a portal to another world where he slowly changed into the creature we now know as Vecna. He started exploring the realm and used his abilities to reconstruct a strange storm-like mass of particles into a gigantic spider-like creature that would later be dubbed the Mind Flayer.
When 11 had to make contact with the Hive Mind in 1983, she unintentionally opened a gate to the Upside Down. Vecna attempted to exterminate humanity twice in 1984 and 1985, using the Mind Flayer and the Hive Mind. He first took control of Will Bayers and sent an army of teenage Demogorgons to attack Hawkins' lab. Later, he took control of a sizable group of people and used their flesh to create a massive spider-like creature in the Mind Flayer's likeness. In all cases, Vecna's schemes were finally foiled by 11 and her supporters when they shut down the Upside Down's gate.
Vecna reappeared in 1986, this time attempting to wipe off humanity more directly. He started killing a lot of Hawkins' lockers, torturing them with his car's power, and then utilizing their deaths to unlock a number of new gates. Dustin, Nancy, Max, and others started looking into the killings, calling the killer Vecna after a Dungeons and Dragons character. In order to defeat Vecna, the group launched a two-pronged attack. Nancy, Steve, Robin went through the upside-down version of the Creel house to attack Vecna's actual body, while 11 employed psychic projection to battle him within his own head. Even after severely injuring him, the group was unable to prevent Vecna from advancing his plans to destroy Hawkins and the entire world. William Will Byers is portrayed by Noah Schnapp. He is Joyce Byers' youngest son, Jonathan Byers' younger brother, Eleven's stepbrother, and Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Max Mayfield's best friends. From Hawkins, Indiana, Will was a quiet, creative child who enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons with his three closest pals, Dustin, Lucas, and Mike. But on November 6, 1983, Will's life took a drastic turn when he encountered a humanoid predator while returning home from his friend's most recent Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Will attempted to flee, but the thing imprisoned him in a different dimension, a shadowy image of Hawkins encrusted with pores, vines, and fog.
Will avoided the beast trapped in the Upside Down. Even though he managed to connect with his mother Joyce from another dimension, he was eventually apprehended and brought to the public library in the other dimension, where he was strung up and bound to an enigmatic vine. After Joyce and Police Chief Jim Hopper got into the Upside Down on their own, they were able to find Will and revive him. They took him right away to the hospital where he was reunited with his loved ones. Despite going back to his previous life, Will's encounter in the Upside Down had a lasting psychological impact. He started to see glimpses of the two realms fleeting in and out of existence.
Will began visiting Hawkins' lab in the fall of 1984 for examinations by Dr. Sam Owens, who rejected his visions as a result of his trauma. But Will's visions turned out to be far more ominous as he fell more and more under the influence of a huge spider-like monstrosity that loomed in the Upside Down's skies. Known colloquially as the Mind Flayer, the creature used its relationship with Will to control Owens and the lab, leading to a fatal bloodbath. The part of the thing that lived inside Will was pushed out of the body and vanished into the night with the aid of Joyce, Jonathan, and Mike's sister Nancy. Furthermore, 11, a friend of Mike, Lucas, and Dustin, and a psychokinetically gifted escaped child test subject from Hawkins' lab, used her abilities to seal the interdimensional gateway, cutting off the Mind Flayer's psychic link and temporarily stopping the Upside Down's incursion into Hawkins. A month after his recovery, Will and his pals went to Hawkins Middle School's Snowball.
All of the other party members were in love relationships by the summer of 1985. Dustin was seeing a Utah girl he met at summer camp. Lucas was seeing Max, Mayfield, and Mike was seeing 11. Due to his friends' lack of attention, Will found taking it back from the fucking top. Due to his friends' lack of attention, Will found it difficult to feel appreciated or welcomed. When he noticed that his buddies were obviously losing interest in D&D, he became agitated and tried to plan new campaigns. To make things worse, Will found that Max's stepbrother Billy was being used as the Mind Flayer's new puppet and felt that the Mind Flayer's presence was still there in Hawkins. Will put in emotions aside and fought the Mind Flayer alongside his allies once more. After 3 months, Will and his family moved out of Hawkins, bringing 11 with them, and he bid his buddies farewell with tears.
The Byers and 11 were moved to Renora Hills, California by Dr. Owens. After observing Will's weird behavior, 11 questioned whether he was crashing on someone. At their new school, Will supported 11 despite the fact that she was frequently bullied by Angela and her pals. Will and Jonathan, together with Mike and Jonathan's friend Agile, set out on a road trip to locate 11 after she was taken away to take part in a government project. Will subtly disclosed his romantic sentiments for Mike during their journey, but Mike was unaware of this. The four discovered 11 in the Nevada desert and assisted her by building a temporary sensory deprivation tank which enabled her to battle Vecna, a recently discovered upside-down villain, from a distance. When the crew returned to Hawkins 2 days later, they were astounded by the extent of Vecna's damage to the town. When Will returned, he felt Vecna's presence and understood that the psychic link he had made in 1984 was with Vecna rather than the Mind Flayer. He told Mike that they had to kill Vecna first in order for the atrocities of the Upside Down to end. Mike Wheeler is portrayed by Finn Wolfhard. He is the party's leader, 11's boyfriend, Dustin Henderson, Lucas St. Clair, Will Byers, and Max Mayfield's best friend, and Nancy Wheeler's younger brother. When Will, Mike's best buddy, inexplicably disappeared in 1983, he and his buddies Dustin and Lucas set out to find him. But instead, they found an escaped girl named 11 while looking for Will. Mike quickly learned that she had some information on Will's absence and asked her to assist in tracking him down. Mike and 11 developed a close relationship and soon came to like one another during their time together. Mike was relieved to have Will back home safely after he was located, but he was deeply saddened by 11's sacrifice in order to destroy the Demogorgon.
A year later, still grieving over 11's loss, Mike called for every night and helped Will with a new supernatural problem. He eventually got back with 11. Then, in order to divert 11's attention and permanently seal the gate, he, Steve, and the allies set about destroying the vast network of yet another interdimensional menace. As he promised 11, Mike eventually went to the snowball dance with her.
until the summer of 1985 when their relationship encountered new difficulties. Mike and Elle appeared to be inseparable. Chief Hopper, Elle's irate adoptive father, scared away Mike in an effort to set limits, endangering the teens' connection. Will also complained about how Mike and Lucas's friendships had changed the dynamics in the friend group. But when Will informed them of the Mind Flayer's presence, they would shift their focus to more urgent issues. They discovered that Bill Hargrove, Max's stepbrother, and other Hawkins residents had been taken over by the Mind Flayer after it was observed that Bill was acting strangely. They then started working to combat the Mind Flayer. Eleven and the Byers were leaving Hawkins 3 months later, and Mike and his pals had to say goodbye to them. Mike and Eleven confirmed their love for one another and agreed to meet together at Thanksgiving before departing.
Mike, Dustin, and Lucas were all devoted Hellfire Club members by the spring of 1986. He went to spend spring break with Eleven in Lenora Hills, California. She had written to Mike to say that she had adjusted to California successfully. But when he arrived, Mike found that Eleven was having more difficulties than she had admitted. While avoiding Lieutenant Colonel Jack Sullivan and his troops, who accused Eleven of committing a murderous rampage in Hawkins, Mike accompanied Will, Jonathan, and Argyle in their quest for Elle after Dr. Owen took her away to concentrate on regaining her abilities. They managed to locate down Eleven in a covert facility in Nevada with the assistance of Dustin's girlfriend, Susie Birmingham, and barely avoided Colonel Sullivan's troop. Later, Mike and others constructed a makeshift sensory deprivation tank so that Eleven could project her consciousness to Hawkins, enabling her to battle Vecna from a distance. Mike showed Elle that he loved her throughout their mental war with the enemy, which gave her the willpower to temporarily taking it back from the top. Which gave her the willpower to temporarily overly taking it back from the top, which gave her the willpower to temporarily overcome Vecna.
The team was astounded by the extent of the damage caused by a recent earthquake when they visited Hawkins 2 days later. When they returned, Will discovered that the psychic bond he had established in 1984 was with Vecna rather than the Mind Flayer. He informed Mike that he still felt Vecna's presence and that Vecna had to die in order for the atrocities of the Upside Down to stop. Mike saw the Upside Down start to blend into Hawkins when he reunited with a very much alive Hopper and assured Will that they would eliminate Vecna once and for all. Maxine Max Mayfield. She is portrayed by Sadie Singh. She is also the protagonist of the book Stranger Things, Runaway Max, and the stepsister of Billy Hargrove. She is the best friend with Will Byers, Dustin Henderson, Jane Eleven Hopper, Lucas Sinclair, and Mike Wheeler. She also has an on and off romantic relationship with Lucas. Max, who was born and raised in California, developed a strong passion for skateboarding Early on, Max and her unpredictable stepbrother Billy relocated to Hawkins, Indiana after her mother's divorce and subsequent remarriage to Nell Hargrove in 1984. Max immediately became well known at the Palace Arcade for her high scores recorded under the player moniker Mad Max and for topping the game leaderboards. Dustin, Lucas, Will, and Mike, who frequently visited the arcade, were drawn to Max's high scores and thought she was a boy. They discovered that Maxine was the same as the enigmatic Mad Max after she attended the boys' class at Hawkins Middle School. Max had a change of heart and tried to make friends with the guys after running into them while trick or treating on Halloween, even though he had been put off by their previous behavior. Dustin and Lucas, who were both secretly lusting for her, attempted to formally join the party by making Max a member, but Max opposed the plan. Max noticed when Will began having unusual episodes and grew even more interested after finding out that Will had vanished the year before. Lucas finally revealed the entire history of events involving Will, 11, the Demogorgons, and the Upside Down. Despite her new friends' initiative reluctance to tell Will what had transpired. After Max, Lucas, Dustin, and their friend Steve Harrington saw a pack of faceless humanoid predators, his initial skepticism would change. The Mind Flayer, a malicious force acting as the Upside Down's brain and heart, quickly took control of Will, Max, and her companions discovered. The Mind Flayer was spread, taking it back from the top. The Mind Flayer was spreading its influence across Hawkins in the form of enormous vine-like tunnels that were buried far beneath the city. Max developed feelings for Lucas, but when she returned to Hawkins, they met awkwardly for the first time. Max further demonstrated her value by snatching Bill's car and driving the gang to the underground tunnels after confronting an unpredictable and aggressive Billy following his attack on Steve at the Bears' residence. There, they attacked the Upside Down's shared hive mind to aid in the battle against the Mind Flayer. Max went to the snowball with her new friends after beating the Mind Flayer, and she would start dating Lucas after they shared their first kiss. As Max went through cycles of dating Lucas, breaking up with him, and then getting back together, he had made friends with 11 by the summer of 1985. But when Billy was observed to be acting strangely, the party's focus turned to him, much to Max's chagrin. The party and their friend would later unite to battle them after the group learned that Billy had been taken over by the Mind Flayer. Max was appalled and traumatized when 11 reminded Bill of his humanity during the group's fireworks battle against the spider monster at Starcourt Mall. Her comments caused Billy to give up his life in order to save 11's. Max was devastated by the death of her stepbrother and suffered from despair, survivor's guilt, and sadness despite her tense relationship with Billy. Dr. Owens had moved the Bears and 11 to California, and 3 months later, Max and the rest of the party said their goodbyes with tears in their eyes.
Max continued to struggle with Billy's passing months later, experiencing regular dreams in which she would relive the moments of his past. She severed her relationships with Lucas and distanced herself from her friends. But in March 1986, she made the decision to assist her old friends in their investigation into Chrissy Cunningham's death. Max and her pals concluded that she had been cast by an enigmatic upside down monster known as Vecna, and that she didn't have much time left to live after discovering that she was exhibiting the same unsettling hallucinations and symptoms as Chris. But when the time came, Max's friends playing of her favorite song through her headphones gave her the emotional fortitude to resist Vecna and come back to Earth, allowing her to withstand Vecna's onslaught.
The group devised an attack strategy after learning of Vecna's scheme to use the killings to open four gates. Max would serve as bait to divert Vecna, while Nancy, Steve, and Robin would attack his actual body in the upside down. Max used her psychic projection ability to induce hallucinations once more at the deserted grill house, but to her astonishment, 11 showed up in her visions. But Vecna defeated 11 and started murdering Max. Max was blinded, her limbs were damaged, and her heart briefly stopped. But she survived the onslaught because of the activities of 11, Nancy, Steve, and Robin. The fourth and final casket opened as a result of this technical death, causing havoc throughout Hawkins. But 11 restarted Max's heart with her powers. Despite being revived, she remained unconscious and hovered on the brink of death. Steve Harrington is portrayed by Joe Keery. He was a Hawkins High School student, Nancy Wheeler's lover and best friends with Tommy H. and Carol Perkins. Nancy grew aloof after her best friend Barbara Holland vanished in 1983, leading Steve to believe she was having an affair with Jonathan Byers. After some foolish behavior, Steve changed his mind, reprimanded his companions, and decided to put things right. Coincidentally, he bravely saved the day by assisting in the battle against the Demogorgon. He then made amends with Jonathan and his girlfriend. After a falling out with Nancy in 1984, Steve joined the party as an ally, particularly with Dustin Henderson, with whom he developed an odd bond. He emerged as a key figure in the fight against the Mind Flayer and assumed the role of authority within the party.
After high school, Steve struggled to find his way, so he worked at Scoop's Ahoy, an ice cream business, with his classmate Robin Buckley, who reprimanded him when he made out with women. In July 1985, feeling self-conscious about working a low-paying job and not being accepted to college, he was more than happy to assist Dustin in interpreting an odd radio signal. The three eventually learned that the Soviets had executed a complex plot. Taking it back from the top. The three eventually learned that the Soviets had executed a complex plot in that Starcourt Mall was only a front for a Soviet base underground. After sneaking into the base with Erika Sinclair's help, the group learned that the Soviets had created a way to go to a different dimension. Steve became good friends with Robin during this time and found out she was gay. When they returned to the surface, the party joined the battle against Billy Hargrove, who was possessed, and the Mind Flayer. 3 months later, after Starcourt burnt down, Steve and Robin would land work at the nearby family video. By the spring of 1986, Steve was still working at Family Video with Robin, who still had a crush on him but put up with his tirades over his convoluted love life. However, when Hawkins was stunned by a series of unexplained killings, their focus was quickly diverted to more urgent issues, and during their investigation, Steve, Robin, and Dustin made friends with Eddie Manson. After learning that the fatalities might have been connected to a notorious 1959 massacre, they eventually found a gate to the Upside Down near Lover's Lake. Steve, Robin, Eddie, and Nancy eventually managed to escape after becoming trapped in the Upside Down and met with their younger companions. After learning Wagner's true identity and motivations, the group decided to assault Wagner as part of their plan to neutralize the supernatural menace. The group did everything they could to stop Wagner's fourth gate from opening, causing havoc throughout Hawkins. Steve, Robin, and Dustin offered to assist victims of the earthquake that resulted from the incident 2 days later. Steve was delighted to see Robin start to form a bond with her crush, Vicky, but the focus quickly shifted to the upside down spores that were falling on Hawkins. Robin Buckley is portrayed by Maya Hawke, and she is also the principal character of the book Stranger Things Rebel Robin. She is the co-worker and best friend of Steve Harrington. Alongside her old classmate Steve Harrington, Robin started working at Scoops Ahoy, the ice cream shop at the recently constructed Starcourt Mall, in the summer of 1985. Robin frequently made light of Steve's short-lived fame and inability to attract female clients. Robin assisted Steve and his friend Dustin Henderson in translating a Russian code that had been intercepted. They discovered that Russians were smuggling goods into Hawkins through the malls, food chains, and companies. The three eventually learned that the Soviets had executed a complex plan and that Starcourt Mall was only a front to hide the establishment of an underground Soviet facility. After sneaking into the base with Erika Sinclair's help, the group learned that the Soviets had created a way to go to a different dimension. When Robin, Steve, and Dustin and Erika returned to the surface, they joined the battle against the Mind Flayer and Billy Hargrove, who was possessed. 3 months after Starcourt burned down, Steve and Robin would land work at the nearby family video. By the spring of 1986, Robin was still putting up with Steve's tirades about his convoluted romantic life, all the while having a serious infatuation on Vicky, abandonment from her school. But when Hawkins was horrified by a series of unexplained killings, her focus was diverted to more urgent issues. As Robin, Steve, and Dustin conducted their investigation, Robin made friends with Eddie Manson and Nancy Wheeler. After learning that the fatalities might have been connected to a notorious 1959 massacre, they eventually found a gate to the Upside Down near Lover's Lake, and following their journey through the Upside Down and final stranding, Robin, Steve, Eddie, and Nancy managed to escape and reunited with their younger companions.
After volunteering to assist victims of the earthquake 2 days later, Robin met Vicky by chance and became friends with her. Later, Robin stared in terror as spores from the Upside Down started to fall on Hawkins. William Billy or Bill Hargrove is portrayed by Dacre Montgomery. Billy was raised in California, but in 1984, after his mother abandoned him and his father wed Susan Hargrove, he moved to Hawkins, Indiana. He went to Hawkins High School there till his death. Among others, he frequently abused Max Mayfield, his older stepbrother. He flirted with Karen Wheeler and was hired to work as a lifeguard at the Hawkins community pool with Heather Holloway. He eventually fell into the hands of the Mind Flayer, who utilized him as a vessel and a means of assembling Hawkins' civilian population in order to construct the Spider Monster, a large physical vessel that would house the Mind Flayer. He was given some superhuman abilities while operating under the Mind Flayer's direction, but unlike the other Flayed, he was never incorporated into the Spider Monster's body.
Billy made the decision to change, and the Spider Monster killed him by impaling him in the chest after he was physically restrained. He apologized to Max in his parting remarks. The authorities concealed his death as a result of the Starcourt Mall fire.
Max was greatly impacted by Billy's passing and distanced herself from her companions. In 1986, her anguish led to her being threatened by the Upside Down once more. Edward Eddie Manson is portrayed by Joseph Quinn. Eddie became the eccentric leader of the Hellfire Club, a fringe organization focused on Dungeons and Dragons. A Hawkins High School student he was. He played electric guitar in his band Corroded Coffin and was friends with Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, and Lucas Sinclair. Eddie was present when his buddy Chrissy Cunningham was horribly murdered in a paranormal manner in 1986. This inspired him to pursue justice for Chrissy, collaborating with the party and their supporters to look into the murder's motive. Additionally, Eddie became the unlucky target of Jason Carver, Chrissy's boyfriend, who thought Eddie was responsible for his murder and organized his basketball team to try to find him.
In the end, Eddie and his pals learned that Chrissy's death was caused by Vecna, a humanoid creature from an alternate realm known as Upside Down, who was also killing people much like her. Eventually, when the others attacked the Kurill house, Eddie used the power of heavy metal to divert Vecna's swarm of Demorats. Unfortunately for Eddie, his attempt to entice the bats away ultimately cost him his life.
Eddie was still falsely accused of being a murderer and the cult leader in the days that followed, but Dustin comforted his distraught uncle by telling him that those who knew Eddie would always remember him in a different light. Lucas Charles Sinclair is portrayed by Caleb McLaughlin. 11. Dustin Henderson, Will Byers, and Mike Wheelers all consider him their best buddy. In addition, he is Max Mayfield's intermittent boyfriend and Erica Sinclair's older brother. He was formerly a Hawkins Tigers player and is a member of both the Hellfire Club and the party. Lucas and his buddies, Dustin and Mike, set out to find their best friend Will after he inexplicably disappeared in 1983. But instead of finding Will, they discovered a mystery girl named Eleven. Lucas questioned the seeming magical circumstances surrounding Will's absence and was suspicious of Eleven's actions and conduct, thinking she was abusing Mike's generosity. As a rift developed between the children, Lucas decided to look into Hawkins National Laboratory on his own. However, this only served to highlight the fact that Eleven was attempting to shield him and his friends from the dangers that were within Hawkins' lab as well as the threat of government agents. Lucas assisted his friends in their fight against the Demogorgon and made amends with Eleven, Mike, and Dustin. Lucas eventually got to see Will again and spent Christmas with his pals. Max Mayfield's arrival in Hawkins in 1984 piqued Lucas and his friends' interest, but when Will began acting strangely, they began to worry more about his welfare. Despite Max's unpredictable stepbrother Billy's menacing actions, Lucas and Max eventually fell in love while looking into the Upside Down's invasion of Hawkins. In the end, Lucas, Max, Steve, Dustin, and Mike helped defeat the Mind Flayer by setting a critical component of the Upside Down's hive mind on fire. A month later, Lucas and his pals went to Hawkins Meadows Snowball, where they danced and kissed, started a love connection with Max.
By the summer of 1985, Max and Lucas had gone through several rounds of dating, breaking up and then getting back together. The group had to break up after Max left Lucas to spend out with Eleven in late June that year. But the focus of the party quickly turned to Billy, Max's stepbrother, who was obsessed to be acting strangely. After learning that Billy and several other Hawkins residents were under the influence of an incarnation of the Mind Flayer, the group decided to unite the party and its supporters in order to combat them. Lucas thought of using pyrotechnics to hit the creature, which injured it and diverted it long enough to keep Eleven alive.
After Will and Eleven left Hawkins 3 months later, Lucas agreed with Dustin to give their Dungeons and Dragons set to Lucas's younger sister Erica. To the annoyance of Dustin and Mike, Lucas's hectic schedule interfered with his time at the Hellfire Club after he joined the Hawkins High basketball team in the spring of 1986. Lucas, fed up with bullying, thought he would gain popularity by joining the basketball team. Maxie's social disengagement after Bailey's death had also caused his connection with her to deteriorate. Lucas was concerned about her, but she would not talk to him. Lucas gradually came to the realization that he had been hanging around the wrong set when Jason Carver's fiancée and several other students were inexplicably killed. Jason's scapegoating of Eddie and the Hellfire Club worried Lucas. After reuniting with his pals, Lucas discovered that Vecna, an entity from the Upside Down, was behind the killings and was opening a number of new gates by leveraging his psychic link with his victims. Lucas got into a violent altercation with Jason, who had followed him and his companions to the Creel house. While attempting to stop Vecna, even though he finally knocked Jason out, he was unable to hold Vecna's telepathic attack on Max or the apocalyptic opening of four enormous gates that converged in Hawkins' downtown. 11 intervened to save Max from Vecna's attack. Lucas considered 11's action a miracle even if Max remained unconscious. In the days that followed, Lucas read books to Max while she was in the hospital. Later, when the spores of the Upside Down started to fall across Hawkins, Lucas and Erica stared in terror. Nancy Wheeler is portrayed by Natalie Dyer. Nancy is an ally of the party and an aspiring journalist. She is Jonathan Bayes' current girlfriend, Mike Wheeler's older sister, and Steve Harrington's ex-girlfriend. Nancy was a simple kid living a simple life in the fall of 1983, not sure if she should spend more time with her new boyfriend, Steve Harrington, or her closest friend, Barbara Holland. But when Barb disappeared without a trace, Nancy decided to join forces with reclusive Jonathan Bayes, whose younger brother Will had also disappeared. As they gradually pieced the puzzle together, they discovered Barbara and Will had been abducted by a monster from another realm. Nancy was devastated to hear that Barbara had been killed, and she became even more eager to vanquish the thing after Will was fortunate enough to avoid its entire vengeance. At the Bayes' house, Nancy and Jonathan put up a booby trap, and with Steve's unbelievable last-minute help, they were able to seriously injure the creature. Nancy's inability to deal with Barbara's death caused a wedge with Steve in the fall of 1984, and she eventually confessed intoxicatedly that she no longer loved him. She once again joined forces with Jonathan and a journalist named Marie Bauman to uncover Hawkins' lab in an attempt to exact revenge on those who had released the creature that killed Barb. She and Jonathan became closer over this time and eventually gave in to their emotions and started dating. Nancy helped Jonathan and his mother exorcise the creature from Will's body after they returned to Hawkins and discovered that Will had been possessed by another entity from the alternate reality. Barbara's death was ascribed to a chemical leak, and the facility was successfully shut down a month later as a result of Nancy and Mary's expose. Nancy quit her relationship with Steve to be with Jonathan and went to Barbara's funeral.
By the summer of 1985, Nancy and Jonathan were working as interns for the Hawkins Post, where Bruce Lowy and her boss, Tom Holloway, regularly treated Nancy disrespectfully. She answered a call about sick rats in the town while working late one night, and she and Jonathan surreptitiously looked into it. This ultimately led to their termination, which produced a wedge between Jonathan and Nancy. However, Nancy resumed the story after her mother encouraged her to do so, and she learned that the rats were connected to the same force that controlled Will.
Following their reconciliation, Nancy and Jonathan worked alongside Nancy's younger brother and his friends to combat the Mind Flayer once more. Dr. Sam Owens moved the Byers family to California 3 months later, and although Nancy and Jonathan said goodbye with tears in their eyes, they vowed to stay together. Nancy got accepted to Emerson College in Massachusetts in the spring of 1986 and started working as an editor and reporter for the weekly streak, the Hawkins High newspaper. Despite their long-lasting love, Nancy and Jonathan were unable to get away for spring break, and Nancy became irritated with Jonathan's lack of communication. Nancy looked into the murders of several Hawkins High School students alongside Steve, Dustin, Max, and Robin, and connected them to the 1950s Creel killings. The group thought Vecna, an entity from the Upside Down, was behind the murders for a more sinister reason. After the little mishap involving Nancy, Steve, Robin, and Eddie Manson in the Upside Down, Vecna gave Nancy a psychic glimpse of who he was and his future objectives. 4 massive gates opened, causing chaos across Hawkins as the group attempted to halt Vecna. When Jonathan returned to Hawkins 2 days later, Nancy met him again and they worked on repairing Hopper's cabin. Shortly after, Nancy and their companions watched in terror as Hawkins started to march with the Upside Down. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Drop a like and subscribe to get notifications. I am Alex, signing out. Taking it back from the top. Oopsie. Taking it back from the top. What the heck? Taking it back from the top.